Madam Ministers, all four of you, it is indeed a pleasure to be in your company and to discuss the issues on which you have more of an expert knowledge. Therefore, I'll try to be very limited. First, but I'd like to say this, ladies and gentlemen, it is all national. So the reform of the public administration is in the hands of the governments. Therefore, I'd like to be clear that there is a very limited room for what all of us in the region, dealing with the regional, can do. First, the attitude of the Regional Cooperation Council is to really respect what is national, to look into the practices, to look into the strategies, to look into the problems, and to check whether and if there is something which can be shared with the others, whether there is a common denominator, and then we try to promote this as a regional cooperation. So we start with national and then try to get to what we call a regional. For instance, we look into the economic reform programs of respective governments and then try to see what are the links that we can then organize a regional cooperation around them. Therefore, I'd like to say the following. Capacity building is what the regional organizations, also supported by European Union, European Commission, can do. Then exchange of best practices and the lessons that have been learned on the national level, and to see what we can use and learn and improve. The third is the peer support, and the fourth is something you've just mentioned, Mr. Schika, and was mentioned by the colleague speaking before, and this is to link the public administration reform with the reforms in justice field and with the anti-corruption processes and engagement. So I'd limit myself there, actually, and would very openly say that we, in the RCC, we respect the national efforts and are working closely besides the governments. We are also working with the players in the field who are regional by definition, and there I mentioned NALAS, RESPA, and RAI. And I'd like to pay respect to them. This is why I'm mentioning, because I also believe that they are the key players. NALAS is a network of the local associations of the local authorities. Therefore, the key word when mentioning NALAS for me is decentralization. There, I can make a detour and be very open. There is no such thing like a key in the field of decentralization. There is a history about this. When Portugal was joining, the issue was raised, and European Parliament has been decided this is not an acquis, because there was no room to bring together the practices of France and practices of Germany. When it comes to being very centralized, being very decentralized, therefore there is no acquis. What is important, therefore, is to make sure that authorities do respect the human rights and they do respect the needs of the citizens. How they are organized, there is no rule, therefore do not even try to sell it as if there was one. Therefore, we are working very closely with NALAS, respecting the specificities of different countries. Then I'd like to mention and pay respect to RESPA. And for me, the key word there is training. So we are very much willing to continue our cooperation with RESPA in order to organize seminars, training, to look into the practices of the others and to see whether this can be shared with the others. The third partner I'd like to mention is RAI, Regional Anti-Corruption Initiative. It is a legacy of the Stability Pact. And with them, we've already produced 2 studies related to corruption proofing of the legislation and the asset disclosure. So we will continue working with RAI when it comes to the tools which then might be used on the national or on the regional level. So I'd be also more specific, mentioning that we have just adopted a 3-year strategic and work plan for the period 2017-2019, and we've pointed out in this work plan that these are the partners that I mentioned, and that we will do exactly what I've said in close cooperation with them, Therefore, with RESPA, we'll specifically aim at better regulatory framework for competitiveness and growth through introduction and implementation of competitiveness proofing of legislation. We will also aim at strengthening the professional criteria for enrollment, something that's been mentioned by all three ministers of the people in public administration, increasing transparency of the work and information exchange. I don't want to close this without mentioning the relevance of the promotion and development of e-services, being mentioned also by some of the colleagues here. But there, I will have a meeting just after this with Albanian Minister Mazharito on what we intend to do jointly in the Paris Summit and is related to the broadband and interoperabilities of the ICT services in the field. And there, I'd like also to mention that there was a great meeting we had in Tirana on e-permits, and there we could have shared the experiences of respective governments, how they deal with this issue. And I'd like to say that the government in Skopje has started first, being followed by the government in Belgrade, and there are already results which could have been shared with the others. Montenegro joined, and I hope that this will continue. What is the role of the RCC then? Well, we bring them together. We organize a group, either ministerial or on a more technical level, and then we discuss what could be done, what's been done in respective country, and whether we have learned something in the process, how to make sure that the next country implementing some certain or different practices can have an improvement. This is how we learn from each other. But I'd like to stop here just in order to give more of room to all of you to discuss with all of us, with the ministers in particular, about these practices. I want it to be clear. It is national, and the Regional Cooperation Council only tries to learn what brings us together around these issues and then what we can share with each other. Thank you.